Alright, I had another video where I discussed a bunch of stuff, but it was really chaotic and I didn't like it, so I'm not going to post it. What I'm going to do is just answer specific questions that I've gotten recently since the last video. I still want to go over harpoons, so don't let me forget that. It's harpoons. Harpoons. It's an important topic. I still want to go over that. One of the most recent questions, this is going to be on a side discussion, is what's my take on flutes on Clovis? Since I was discussing hafting methods and why they might be made a certain way. So let me touch on the flute thing for a minute here. Okay. First of all, we have lots of different looking, what I think are different, significantly looking, different looking profiles on Clovis. Just the general profile, right? On top of that, we have various things going on. Okay, as far as the fluting is not always the same. Doesn't always look the same. And sometimes it's non-existent. No fluting. And sometimes we got large pieces from the Clovis era. No fluting. But, you know, we might have some big old flake scars that go all the way across or almost all the way across. Now, these preforms or whatever, well, maybe not. Especially if the stems are well developed. Okay? So what's my take on fluting? Why did they do it? Well, my simple answer to this, and I like to try to keep things simple, is it's just simply a result of thinning. I'm not judging any of these things by the end result. The end result is a consequence of the thinning process. All right? Like this one here, this flute takes up almost the entire point. Just I think luck has a lot to do with that when that happens. This flute is long and skinny and feathered. Very nice little flute. This one is has multiple flutes. Sometimes they have more than this. Or they thin it several times from the same spot. And sometimes it has a step fracture and it's not very long. All these different configurations tell me that it's not the flute itself that they're after, it's the thinning that they're after, because these are different. Even among the same profiles, let's say a napper has made 3 of the same type of profile. Everything is the same on his Clovis points as far as profile, which is pretty common. When a napper makes a set, the outline is pretty consistent. Some of his flutes or thinning flakes are going to be different. These are not all going to be the same. He's not going to make this terminate at the same general spot each time. Now you might say, well, yeah, what about when you flip it over? If he can do it on the other side to where it's almost the same, front and back, then the rest of these should be the same too. Well, yes, that is true. It's possible that he could do that many times very consistently, but I think the chances are what happened with this is that he understood how to thin it, the base, with this particular material, and the material lent itself to a length of a flag that large with the amount of force he was using and with his platform preparation and so forth. I think material has a lot to do with the consistency of the length of the flakes and how they look. And when you're talking about the same stone in the same area, it's pretty consistent as far as the material goes. Now, when you start getting into other stones, maybe from a different spall on a different stone, you're starting to get more inconsistencies in the material. Now, let's say the guy had only obsidian and thousands of pounds of exactly the same. Can he make all these Clovises look exactly the same with obsidian? And does that happen? Right? Exactly the same, blah, blah, blah. Same material, very consistent. It's all obsidian, same napper, blah, blah, blah. Are they all going to be the same? Does this contradict what I was saying earlier? That it's only the thinning and not really aesthetics? Because this might look like he was aiming for 1/2 of the point. 1/2 of point is flute length every time because he likes the way that looks. Maybe the grinding only goes up 35%. The flute is 50%. The grinding is, what do they say, 35%. Can't read it. 50% flute, 35% grind. Would he do that consistently every single time because he likes the way it looks? Well, maybe. I doubt it though. I think it becomes pretty random. The more you do it, the more random these things are going to get. Especially if you're working different materials and you don't want to break this stuff. Thinning from the base is kind of risky. Eventually, the more skill you have, you can do the same stuff on different materials. Yes, it gets more consistent as you go along. Skill level, let's say there's a skill level from 1 to 10. 1 being the worst and 10 being the best. If you're at a 10, are you going to make them all consistent no matter what material you use? Because you like the way it looks? Is that your goal? Will that be your goal? Aesthetics determine how you're developing your skill. Is it because you like the way it looks? I mean, is that what we're going for? I don't think so. I think that that mentality creeps in with modern nappers. Yes. Ancient nappers? No. But why with modern? Why do we have this mindset that the more skill we have, the more consistent they're going to look? Why do we have that mindset? Why don't we just copy what they did and do it kind of randomly, depending on the material, and kind of go more with the flow? I don't know. I think it has to do with competition. We are more aware of others than they used to be back in the day. We are more aware of others. We are more aware of the best. We are more aware of the exceptions to the rules, the very finest made, etc., etc., etc. We are more aware these days of other exterior factors. So in modern times, we tend to focus on what is rare and what we can do exceptionally to determine who's the best. So it goes actually the other way. If you can be consistent and blah, 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 you're the best. Instead of being the best and then just going with the flow and making these things just so they work. we have a different conception of what is best in modern times. That's my view. That's my take. So two things. My take is the fluting is part of the hafting strategy, and part of the hafting strategy is thinning the stem. It's not being consistent, making things that look good as a measure of your skill. I think it's just a matter of thinning. I think it's not this here, right? I guess that's the easiest way for me to explain that one. So my take is, one, it's thinning, and two, it's the higher skill you get, the more you will adapt yourself to just what works. Okay? You don't force the issue to try to make them all consistent. In ancient times, I think skill was measured more in your ability to get something to work instead of getting something perfectly consistent. All right. Another question was a confusion between Spears and Atlatls. I don't know if there's a confusion, but I was told and pleasantly reminded and politely reminded that Australian natives fire a spear from their atlatls. They're shaped a little bit different than the Native American atlatl, right? And there's no fletching. Okay, I was reminded of that. I've seen them use these. Yes, it's true. They don't use fletching. I exaggerated the tip here because on the ones that I've seen, at least, it's heavy. It's a heavy tip. And not very flexible, as far as I could tell. Not very flexible. Does that matter? Well, in a way it does. When you fire an atlatl dart, during the initial stages, the first thing that happens when you apply force is you have a bowing upward, and as the atlatl is rotated, it bends the other way, and on the it just keeps flexing, and when it's at the point of release, it's flexing the other way. So it goes through up, down, up. Okay. Now, does that happen with the Australian types? Yeah, I think it does. But this system, the way they've got it, I don't see any atlatl weights on their atlatls. I see kind of a shorter type projectile. I'm not sure exactly, because I haven't really fired this system without fletching, this type of arrangement with just a heavy wooden tip, just solid wood. But the way that I watch them, the way that they look when I watch them, is they don't exhibit as much flexibility as the darts that I've seen with fletching. So what does that translate into? What does that mean? Well, I think these are called spears. I think in Australia they do call them spear. And it could be because they don't have fletching, right? I'm trying to think of when I shoot a stiff dart, because I have shot stiff darts. When I shoot a stiff dart, I have to be very careful and very slow when I shoot one. I'm pretty sure. So it it's a short range type of thing. When I'm shooting an Atlatl dart, I can really wind up and really crank it, and it'll bend a lot. And when it becomes released, you can hear you can hear the flutter, and the fletching will straighten this thing out. With a less flexible spear or dart, you can't really exert all that much power because it's going to be the this lower end as you release that lower end. First, it starts out, flat, but it starts to do this thing, and then it really starts to do that. But it'll self-correct because this gravity eventually pulls this back down, and eventually it'll get to the target in that position. So it starts out flat when you throw it. It starts to do this and do that, and then it starts coming back down. Okay, so you got to kind of time this or get used to where it straightens back out and adjust your range or adjust your technique to this range where it goes through its little thing and then finally levels out. It's a different way of throwing than this way. Or this way, the flight of this dart is just wobbly all the way to the target. But it's perfect. It's kind of straight. It appears to be straight as far as the look of the dart. It appears straight here, relatively straight here, relatively straight there. With this fletch dart. But with this system with no fletching, it does a little wonky thing before it gets to the target. That's just the way I see it, okay? Now, I may be wrong about the reduced flexibility. I have to explore this. But I have seen this, so I am aware of this. I just haven't tested it. Okay, so that's what I wanted to explain on that. Okay. I'll need to do more work on that. What else did I get a question on? Or what else was I thinking about? Oh yeah, harpoons. All right, so harpoons are interesting because of the arrangement of the tip. Now, I've heard a theory where Clovis looks like a harpoon point, and yes, it certainly does. I'm going to make a comparison between an actual harpoon point and a Clovis. This is a little bit exaggerated. Now, I was looking at Inuits from Nova Scotia. If you look on the internet, Tim Rast has done excellent reproductions of Inuit type harpoons from Labrador, Nova Scotia, that sort of area. His internet name is Elfshot. Right? Anyway, that's where I'm getting a lot of this harpoon stuff, because he makes the reproductions and you can look at them in 3 dimensions and they're very accurate and all that. There are similarities between the harpoon points and Clovis, and there may be even some confusion because there's such a thing as a Paleo Eskimo. Okay, there are Paleo Indians. This is not the same time period. Not same time period. Not same time period. If you hear Paleo Eskimo and Paleo Indians, they're not the same. And these guys are like 3,500 BP maximum, and these guys are like 30. What is it? 13 050 BP. Big difference. Okay? Paleo Indians are not Paleo Eskimos. Okay, this is Paleo Eskimo, and this is Paleo Indian. Paleo Indian, Paleo Eskimo. All right, but there are similarities, and I can see how you would think, or some people would come up with the idea that maybe a Clovis was a harpoon point, or can be used as a harpoon point. All right. My take on that is yes, yep, it's possible that some Clovises were used as harpoon points. But that's only because I think Clovises were used for everything. All right? Because everything. It was used for knives, spears, darts, atlatl darts, maybe even handheld utility knives with no handles, blah, 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 all kinds of stuff. They were used, I think Clovises were used for everything. That's why I think it's possible they could have been harpoon points. But let's get back into how do you make a harpoon point. Well, one of the interesting things is how you shape the bone part. Because there's, okay, here we go. We got the shaft of the harpoon. This is the shaft. We got one light on. Let's see. Is that better? Okay, we got the shaft here. Then we have, let me draw this carefully. Okay, let's see. We have this. We have where the line is connected that attaches. Sometimes there's two parts here. This part and that part. Sometimes you have a second shaft. And then you have the tip. Now this, let me see if I can make sure this is in the correct orientation. Okay, what is this? This is a shelf here. Shelf 4 point. Let's blow this up. We got, this is just one example that I saw. And I have a book on harpoon points too. And we have, in here we have something going on for the attachment of this part. Okay, there's something going on here. This is the joint. And I'll get into that later. But this right now concerns us here. This is a hole through, and this is a hole through here. And what happens is the point gets set in here, and then it's wrapped through that area there, and this bottom of the point rests on the bottom of the shelf. Now front view. Okay. Let's see. This is the shelf here. The point. And there's wrapping across the point there. And then we have this area, this dotted line here, where we insert the second shaft, and it fits neatly in here. And I see sometimes there's a wrapping across that. It's open. This is an open shelf here. And then we have the this little pointy area here. That's the dotted line there. Okay, so this is what concerns us here. The way this is hafted, the point is hafted to this bone part. This is bone. This might also be bone, but usually the shaft is wood. Now we have examples of this in the archaeological record. Very clear examples. Now a Clovis can be hafted this way too. Okay, with these, see that right there? They got notches. You can haft them this way. If not, it's just hafted with just glue. If there's no notches, it's just glue in this area and in this area. In this case, it wouldn't be a shelf. It would be from the side view. It would be like what you normally would see with a V-notch and the point glued in. This is from the side. This is from the top. I know it doesn't correspond very well, but I think you get the idea. Okay, this is what we're concerned with here, that the Clovis might be hafted in this way to a bone foreshaft. And just to draw to see how it would look like, this shelf, you can make it convex to match the Clovis base. You can put little oracles on this and then have your Clovis. And then you can have the other side, the opposite side, fluted more deeply than this side. Okay, the one that rests against the shelf. And you can also have that side flatter. See, right here is where it comes out. Here's the Clovis. You can wrap like this, which would translate to looking like this. For a harpoon tip. Oops, I'm off the frame. But you can wrap it like this. You can have the main flute on this bottom part to meet up with the bone part of this harpoon tip. You know what I mean? We can imagine the Clovis being hafted that way. All right, that's all. Now, was it hafted this way in reality? Do we have any evidence? No, we don't have evidence, but what we have is just the appearance that it could be this way. What would be the advantage of having a Clovis harpoon? Well, if you're hunting seals with Clovis, you can immediately see the advantage, just like any other point. I don't see any particular advantage with this shape, with the flute, with this design. I don't see any particular advantage. The fluting and the thinning of the base, for me, has more of an advantage if you have a V-notch, a long V-notch at the end of a foreshaft. That to me is the advantage of the very thin area here, so it fits within the V-notch, or even a U-notch, a long deep one. Okay, that's both in my hafting experiments and just the look of the whole thing. I think Clovis is more adapted to this than to this configuration. Okay, but you never know. They could have been used in both situations. Okay, I think that was it as far as the questions that I got recently and the ones I was thinking about. One more thing before I run out of time. With the atlatl dart and the atlatl attached you're going to have a different point of balance. Okay, just real quick here. You have a counterweight there. The point of balance is usually like 43 to 45% on this side, and the rest is like 60%. That's where you get the point of balance on the dart by itself. But if you attach the atlatl, once you got it hooked up and you got your hand there, the counterweight and the atlatl itself drags this side down, so your point of balance is somewhere here, or maybe even on your hand. So it shifts the point of balance. I didn't discuss this, but I just wanted to make that clear. The point of balance on this system is not here. This is for the dart. It'll shift to this area when you've got it attached to your atlatl with the counterweight. And you can mess with this with the length. It'll affect the weight. You don't need as much weight here with a shorter length, and that kind of thing. All right, so I think that's it. I'll probably do a part 4. But I'll need to do a little bit more research on the Australian way of shooting the atlatl. Also the Maya and the Aztec way of shooting. As far as I can tell, they were also very specialized, or there are some differences in how they shot. Basket makers may have shot differently than other people's as well. This particular model here is based on the basket maker primarily, and the artifacts related to that culture. Okay. All right, that's it.